Hello, everybody, and welcome back to American Sports Broadcasters. We missed our results video. Tough scheduling kind of got in the way of that, and you know that's going to kind of happen with us from time to time. We do have busy schedules, and so we just won't always be able to put videos out. So we're going to talk about baseball next time. A lot of things in the MLB have stayed kind of stagnant, pretty much stayed where they are. So we're going to talk about that next week at this video. If we do a results video next week, we won't be doing it during that one. It'll be our normal full video that we do baseball and kind of see where things are at. Okay, we're going to start off in the NFL this week. And first game, and I think probably the biggest game in the entire NFL this week, the Bengals are playing a rematch versus the Steelers at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. Brian, what are your first impressions about this game?
Well, this game's always a big game. I mean, there's no question about it. Always a game that people are really wanting to watch. What really, sticks out with me is that the Bengals sort of struggled against the Jets, only won by a point. But then you have the Steelers beating the Redskins pretty handily. But the question is, yeah, it's the Redskins. That's the question. But I think really what sticks out to me is I feel like this game is going to be mainly it's going to be about which quarterback can play better. I mean, both of them had a solid week. Andy Dalton, 23 and 30, 366 yards, one touchdown, one interception. Roethlisberger on the other hand, 27 for 37, 300 yards, three touchdowns, one interception. And, strong quarterbacks on both sides. So I think that's going to be one of the keys to this game.
You and your freaking
I
quarterbacks,
know.
man. Yeah, I mean, I tell you, you're almost ignoring the fantastic wide receivers. Andy Dalton would probably be nothing without AJ Green. He had 180 yards of receiving last week. On the Steelers side, you got Antonio Brown is the biggest name on that side, but they have multiple weapons really on both teams to go along with the receiving core. They both have really good running backs. Le'Veon Bell obviously is really good for Pittsburgh. And of course, the steel curtain on defense. First of all, fantastic nickname.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's better than Legion of Boom. Personal opinion, that's another topic altogether. And you know what? They're playing at Pittsburgh, and I think I'm gonna have to give this one to the Steelers. The Bengals, they're going to be tough this year. And, this is a big game for them coming back, a rematch off of the ugly playoff loss last, what was it now, December? December? I believe December. And so they're coming off of a bad playoff loss. It was ugly. There were personal fouls. There was unsportsmanlike conduct, cheap shots, fines, ejections. It was not good, and it wasn't like it was embarrassing. If I was a Bengals fan, I would be embarrassed as a fan that my team performed that way, and so they're gonna be kind of looking for some redemption. So obviously. They're going to play really hard. Well, it'll be interesting to see how clean this game is played. Probably I would imagine the Steelers are going to maybe be looking for a little revenge here and there. Um, but yeah, I got to go with the Steelers here. I think it'll be a good, tough game, and I just think that the Steelers are going to come out on top this week.
When these two teams play, they remind me a little bit of a Michigan Ohio State game. The two teams ready to pound it out, really hit each other. And once again, I have to correct you. The Bengals win this game because they're looking for that redemption. But not only that, they played a tougher team last week and gave up fewer yards. The defense stepped up last week, and Steelers won handling against the Redskins, but you allow the Redskins to get 384 yards on you. That's doesn't cut it for me. The other fact of the matter is the red rifle. You can say, they got great receivers, and every quarterback needs that. But the quarterback's the one who decides what receiver that ball goes to. Fact of the matter is, Bengals take this one for redemption, and they're gonna take out the Steelers.
Okay, well, we'll certainly find out. Next game, talking about another rematch from the playoffs last year. Kansas City is taking a trip down to Houston. They're going to take on the Texans. Kansas City last week, They were down big. They were down trailing at one point 24-3. They came back, beat the Chargers in overtime. I was getting worried that whatever small amount of credibility I have here was going to be ruined. It was not. I was very excited. And the first half they did not play like they did from a lot of last year. They were just very lethargic. They came out. They had a good first drive, scored on a field goal, and then nothing really happened after that until the third quarter. So they're going to need to come out early against a really tough Texans defense. Obviously, the Brosweiler played, pretty decent. He wasn't fantastic last week, but he was defense. I think the Texans offense does have a lot of weapons on it. I just think Kansas City has more. Kelsey was fantastic. Their defense overall, I think, is like when I think Texans defense, I think pretty much J.J. Watt. Can I name another player on the Texans defense? The answer is no. And I feel like the Chiefs just have a better defensive unit overall, and I think they have a little more expectations coming into this game. I think they feel like they've achieved more here this last year or so, and I think they're coming in with a lot of confidence coming off a big comeback, and I think they're going to take it away.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Yeah, the Chiefs really gave us a scare last week. But I think it speaks volume that they were able to come back and win this game. And yeah, the Texans, good team. Brock Osweiler played pretty good last week. Defense played really good. But I give this to the Chiefs because, I think they learned from last week. They are going to fix what was not working in that first half. But you know what? They just showed that they have heart, and they're not going to give up in a game, even when it looked like they didn't really have a shot. So yeah, I give it to the Chiefs just for that reason.
Next game I want to talk about, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing at the Arizona Cardinals. And this was a game that was a little difficult for me to pick. The Buccaneers came out, they had a fantastic game against Atlanta, and they won 31-24, solid victory. Obviously not by college standards, but this is the NFL. That 7-point difference, that's pretty significant. They had really a pretty good game. The one thing that I would look for more is Doug Martin only had something like 67 yards or so and no touchdowns. So he needs to really, I don't know if they need to get the ball to him more. I don't know if the offensive line needs to block for him more. Didn't watch that game, but find a way to get him a little more involved. Jameis Winston, I think, played a really good game. And then on the flip side, you have the Arizona Cardinals, who lost to the New England Patriots without Tom Brady or Gronk. So that honestly was huge. I was super happy we didn't talk about that game because I definitely would have picked the Arizona Cardinals, no question about it. And I think the Arizona Cardinals, I think they did play a really solid game for the most part, and they just came out on the losing end. I think they're going to be looking to come back, and I think that they win in front of their home crowd against the Buccaneers.
Well, looking at these two teams and how they performed in this last week, I mean, they look pretty balanced. Total yards are about the same, and total yards allowed about the same. So the offense and defenses played relatively, pretty equal yardage-wise. But the Cardinals, playing against the Patriots, they sort of had the problem the Chiefs did, where they fell behind early, started to come back towards the end, and it was just, it was a little too late. They got beat on a last second field goal. I mean, it came down to that. But you know what? I give it to the, really both teams sort of struggled, but yet won. But the Bucs won, and love my quarterbacks. Jameis Winston, I think, just powers the Bucs ahead of the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals sort of got a little shell shocked losing that game with playing a Patriot team, as you said, without Tom Brady and Gronkowski. So I give it to the Bucs.
All right, so that'll be a really good one to watch if you can. I don't know we don't know what the broadcasting looks like yet, but I think that'll definitely be a very good one. Next one I'm going to talk about here, NFC North Showdown. Green Bay is playing in Minnesota. They're taking on the question mark of the quarterback Vikings. I'm curious to see what you have to say about that after a decent but rather what's unmemorable. Was that the word? Un un
Just
it
it's nothing that stood out.
Exactly.
It didn't stand out. But I do think the Vikings, they sort of showed that, yeah, losing Bridgewater hurt, but they got some players that'll step up. And yeah, the quarterback situation isn't great. Sean Hill, like we said, it just wasn't memorable. It wasn't something that really stuck out. However, in this game, I give it to the Vikings. I think, that they're sort of playing with a chip on their shoulder, saying, you know what, we lost, our quarterback, and, we got to show people that we're not, a team that if we lose a big piece, we're not relying on just one player. So I do give this one to the Vikings.
Well, and they beat the Titans last week, but they did it off of their defense. Their defense is really one of the best defenses in the NFL, I think. They scored 2 touchdowns, 2 defensive touchdowns, and one off a pick six, and the other on a fumble, scoop and score. But their offense, they didn't score a single touchdown. They scored 4 field goals. And now Mike Zimmer is saying that he hasn't even told the players who he's going to start at quarterback this week because he told some of them last week that it was going to be Hill, and then it kind of leaked out, and he wants to keep it secret. So I personally don't think that's really the best strategy, just because your players kind of have to know what to expect. Not a horrible strategy depending on how you run your practices. It's great from an intrigue standpoint in terms of teams game planning against you. It's fantastic for that. But if they start Bradford, we don't really know how well he knows the scheme yet. Sean Hill is a very average quarterback. He's been pretty much a backup his entire career, and I think even in front of their home crowd in their brand new stadium, which is beautiful, by the way, I think it's not enough. The Green Bay Packers didn't play a great game last week. Rodgers had a couple, for Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play that good, in terms of numbers at least. He had a couple of really great plays. Eddie Lacy looked kind of like he was back to his old self again. Nothing flashy in the numbers, but I think he was pretty efficient. And their defense, they only gave up 24 points against the Jaguars, who spent a ton of money in the free agency. It's tight. This game, if Bridgewater is here, I got to go totally Vikings, absolutely all the way, and they proved that at the end of last year, Week 17, when they won the NFC North in that game. But I think this year it's going to be the Packers. I wish it wasn't the Packers because I hate them with a passion. But I just can't see the Vikings coming away with a victory against a really pretty solid team in Green Bay.
Like I said, I give it to the Vikings because you know what, and Mike Zimmer can try to keep it a secret. I think there's no question that Sean Hill will start this game. Now, that's not to say Bradford won't get any reps in this game, but I just think they'll stay with Sean Hill till they can give Bradford some more time to get used to the system. I don't think he's probably pretty used to it, and I don't think he would really perform much better than Hill anyway. But Green Bay just didn't look too good to me, and the Titans aren't the best team to say you beat. But I just I give it to the home team.
All right, final game in the NFL we're going to talk about here today. In terms of high profile, no, it's not, but it's important to me, and I am a co-founder of this show, and therefore it's going to be in this show. The Titans are playing against the Lions in the Detroit home opener. and the Titans defense, they played really pretty solid. Like we said, Vikings didn't score an offensive touchdown. They made some bad mistakes offensively, gave up 2 turnovers for touchdowns. But on the flip side, the Lions defense, they played a great first half until that final drive. Andrew Luck scored a touchdown right before halftime. And then that whole second half, they really didn't play too well. They gave up a 21-3 lead and then had to come back and get a last-second field goal to win it against the Colts. So, haha, I beat you in that game.
I beat you overall. So
Well, yes, by 1 point in 2 games. I am slightly bitter. But I think Detroit comes away with this one. I think their defense is going to fix a lot of their problems. I think Mariota is not at the Andrew Luck level. I think he is still in many ways. I think he's still a rookie after being injured a lot last year. I think he's still learning, and I think Detroit showed that they have a really good offense that can really put up points, and they're going to win this game.
yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I'd have to give this to the Lions. I think it's gonna be both defenses are gonna play a strong game. But I think it ultimately comes down to if the Titans want to win this game, Mariota's gotta step it up and be a star, sort of like Luck can. And I agree with you. I don't think he's at that caliber yet. So I mean I think in some respects it'll be for a while a close game, but I think just towards the end, um, Detroit will pull away. But it will be, I think, a defensive battle.
All right, so that'll take us into college football, and we'll let Brian go ahead and start us off here.
All right, so I think one of the most sought after games to watch this week is number 2 Florida State at number 10 Louisville. Now, a lot of people are like, Louisville, are they really, really a team that should be up there? And from the first 2 games playing Charlotte and playing Syracuse, a lot of people would say no. But they are blowing these teams away, and they're doing it in crazy fashion. I mean, they're scoring a lot. Yardage looks good. The quarterback looks great. 37 for 62 with 697 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception in 2 games. But Florida State, though, also looks really good. And they beat Ole Miss their season opener, and that was big. And then played a game against Charleston State, which is what it is. But Francois, their quarterback, is looking really good. 58 and 84, 681 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. And as I compared him a couple weeks ago to looking like Jameis Winston. This is going to be, I think, a lot better game than a lot of people are going to think. I think a lot of people think Florida State might run away with this just because Louisville hasn't really played anybody. And whether or not you say Ole Miss is good competition is up for debate, but at least Florida State played a tough team. This game, actually, I believe the spread's only like 2-3 points. It's very close. But I give this to Florida State because I think they play hard. They play like more power football. They play harder. I think their defense is just going to get a lot of pressure on Louisville's quarterback Jackson, sort of like they did to Kelly of Ole Miss, and I think they're going to force some turnovers.
I'm going to fully agree with you here, Brian. I think playing that opening game against a really tough team in Ole Miss, well, at the time, at least was thought to be maybe not one of the toughest teams, but they're number 19, a very solid team. I think that helps them a lot. I think they've played really well defensively, especially in that second half. They forced a bunch of turnovers. They capitalized on those turnovers, which is key. And I think even though they're the away team, I think that they come away with this game. And I think they have too much experience on their side. I think they have too much desire. I think when I watch this team, I kind of have a feeling that they want to be up at the top. They want to be a playoff contender. They want to be a national championship contender, and they got to prove it by beating Louisville. I think they will.
I think so. I think the next game to really go to is number 1 Alabama at number 19 Ole Miss. Now, We talked about Ole Miss lost to Florida State in their season opener, but if you really watch that game, Ole Miss played a good game until the turnovers started to happen. I mean, 3 interceptions in one game thrown by Kelly, and it's because he was pressured way too much. That offensive line started to break down, and credit Florida State's defense. Um, but I mean, it all came down to that. If the turnovers weren't there, I really think Ole Miss might have won that game. I mean, they played Florida State very tough. And if you look at Alabama so far this year, they blew away number 20 USC, but USC, in my opinion, as I said, should never have been ranked, and it proved in that game. But then we watched last week, and Alabama ended up winning 38-10, so a 28-point win. But if you looked at that first half, they were struggling against Western Kentucky. It was close, back and forth. Western Kentucky was stopping Alabama. I mean, it was crazy for a while, and you were starting to wonder like what happened. And also in that game, Lane Kiffin tried to get a little flashy with some pitches and stuff, and it caused a turnover. And Nick Saban gave him, as he would call it, an ass chewing. Literally lit him up on the sidelines. And when asked in a post game interview, he said, no, it wasn't an argument, it was an ass chewing. Um, so, and this game's got a little history to it. A couple years back, Ole Miss was the one to pull the upset against Alabama at Ole Miss. And if the turnovers aren't there, I give this one to Ole Miss. I feel like they learned from that first game. I give this one to Ole Miss on the upset because I think Alabama's overrated.
I gotta go with Alabama here. Sorry, everybody who hates Alabama. I guess they hate us because they hate us. I'm not gonna even claim to be an Alabama fan. I'm not, but I think that they have a really good defense. I think that they are going to be forcing those turnovers. I think they're going to get the pressure on the quarterback. I think their offense is going to come out firing. I think that they're just going to. I mean, this is a game that like you talked about, has some history. I think they're going to want to prove that they're the better team. And I just honestly can't picture Alabama losing this game. You talked about how they struggled the first half against Western Kentucky, but then they came back strong in the second half. Ole Miss is the flip side. They started out pretty strong against Florida State. They fell apart in the second half, and I think in sports in general, it's been proven time and time again that it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Ole Miss is not going to get off to a great start. I don't think they might get off to a decent start, but if they can't keep it up, they will lose this game. And I think Alabama just has the tools, they have the talent to keep the pressure on them the entire game and just wear them down. And I think that's why they win.
Well, but another thing we have to take into consideration: any time going on the road in any conference is difficult. But the SEC is one of the most difficult conferences to go win
This
on the
is
road.
true.
And whether or not the SEC is as good as it has been in past years is also up for debate. But going on the road to any SEC team is always a challenge. And so I think it just also helps Ole Miss in this case. So the next game to really look at, and this one should be interesting, is number 12 Michigan State at number 18 Notre Dame. Um, you know, and on paper, Notre Dame looks really good in this game. And we saw them lose their season opener to my Texas Longhorns in double overtime, 50-47. And they showed in that game that the offense they want to run is just like what Texas wants to run. They want to do the power offense. They're willing to pound the ball, and then they're willing to air it out. And they looked really good. I mean, it was two quality teams battling it out. And Michigan State, on the other hand, beat Furman in their season opener by 15 points. But the thing is the second week they had a bye week, so they had 2 weeks to prepare for Notre Dame. And while Notre Dame was playing Nevada and ended up winning 39-10. But you know what? I give the advantage to Notre Dame because I just feel they're tougher. They're hungry for that big win. They were hoping to get that against Texas and they didn't, and they're hungry for that big win. But I just watching them play with that power football, I think it's just going to be a little too much for Michigan State.
Well, yeah, Notre Dame did look pretty good in that game. I think they got to come out and they just got to play Kaiser the whole time. Don't even mess with that other quarterback. He wasn't nearly as good. And I think generally offenses, not all the time. Like we saw Texas, they played really well with a two quarterback system, but I think in general, I think they tend to play better with a one. But Texas is a little bit of the exception because they almost run it like it's a wildcat.
Right.
And I think we talked about how Michigan State had the 2 weeks to prepare, and I think that's key here. I think Michigan State has circled this game on their calendar from way back in when the schedule was first released. This is the game they've been building towards. It wasn't Furman. It was Notre Dame all the way. They've probably been prepping this game for just months, probably really. And they had the extra 2 weeks to fully prepare on for Notre Dame. I think they have a bunch of really good players. We don't know for sure what kind of players they have. Because they lost their great offensive tackle in Conklin. They lost their starting quarterback. So we don't know entirely for sure how good they are, but I think that they are going to be pretty good, and I think they're going to be good enough to beat Notre Dame.
All right.
Very close game, though.
Well, and the game that game day is at this week is number 3 Ohio State in Norman versus number 14 Oklahoma. This game will be, I think, just a crazy game. I mean, we saw Oklahoma lose to Houston in their game opener, 33-23, and then came back and just slaughtered Louisiana Monroe. Well, Ohio State has won handily in both games, but did struggle a little bit in the first quarter against Tulsa.
Really, the second quarter too,
Mhm.
and then I didn't see the end of that game because of the rain delay, and I just switched to other things. But I'm sorry if I'm interrupting right here, but I feel like Ohio State is just the team right now that I think they are very overrated. I think that they don't take their opponents seriously all the time. I think they feel like they're really good, and I think they think they're better than they are, and I think they're ranked higher than they probably should be. And we saw Oklahoma play against Houston. They didn't look bad against Houston. Houston looked really good against Oklahoma. That defense was fantastic. And Ohio State's defense has not been. I mean, by the numbers, it's been good, but if you watch it, it's been just kind of solid. I mean, it's good. I don't think it's good enough to stop Oklahoma.
And I would have to agree. The thing is, Oklahoma got a taste of playing that tough team first, while you have an Ohio State team that understands playing competition. But the thing is, they're a very young team, and they're I would have to say they're a cocky team. It's led by example. I feel Urban Meyer is a very cocky coach. He's not the only one in college football, but I feel like they build themselves way too high. I give this one to Oklahoma because they're more experienced, and I think this is their like makeup game from losing that Houston game. This is their redemption, and I also would agree with you. Ohio State is just they're too inflated. They should not be where they're at.
Okay. I guess the next game we're going to talk about is USC is playing at Stanford and at number 7 Stanford, and really on paper this game is one that looks like it should be a blowout for Stanford. However, this is a rivalry game, and we have seen in the past several times that anything can happen in a rivalry game. And I don't want to talk about this game too much. I feel like it's going to be kind of a waste of time. I do say Stanford comes out and wins. I think they have a better team overall. McCaffrey is obviously, fantastic. I think they have a good quarterback. They need to get past some of their offensive lulls that they go through. I think their defense is pretty good, and I think they beat USC.
I agree with you. Rivalries, anything can happen, but I feel like this is that one year where it's not going to be a good rivalry. I pick Stanford by 21.
Oh, you're going specifics now.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and now talk about number 11 Texas at Cal, and this is going to be a big game, really for Texas just to station themselves to say, you know what, we can go a whole, all our non-conference and win them out. Cal is 1-1, beat Hawaii, lost by 5 points to San Diego State. Now, but you got to give them credit. They're not a team that you can just dismiss. They're not as good since Goff left, but and you have a Texas team who wants to keep rising in the polls, who wants to, keep that true freshman quarterback going, and really, bolster him to fame and take the team to fame. So really, there's not a ton to talk about this game, but I think if Texas stays on the game plan they've been running, do the power football, if they need in the red zone, bring swoops in, let him pound it in. I definitely give this game to Texas. I think they'll probably win pretty handily.
Yep, I agree with you, and I don't really have anything to add. I think you covered everything pretty solidly. And I guess that takes us to our second to last game of number 17 A&M is playing at Auburn. Auburn, they played pretty well against Clemson. At least defensively, they only gave up, what was it? 18 points, 20, 19 points, something like that. But the thing is, then you saw Clemson the next week. They had kind of similar numbers. So it's almost kind of questionable of was that Clemson not being as good as we all thought they were, or is Auburn's defense playing well? I think their defense is playing pretty well. I think Auburn is probably a little tougher than people give them credit for, but I think A&M, they had a big win against UCLA early on, and I think they just kind of solidified it last week. And I think that A&M is just going to come out, I think, and win. I haven't been able to watch either of these teams, but I got to pick A&M because they've had the little bit of the competition. Auburn's had competition too, but A&M came out and won that competition, and so they have more confidence, whereas Auburn is trying to get back into it.
This game is going to be interesting. A&M at the start of the season, everybody's like, what are they going to be? They had a lot of quarterbacks, first string, second string, third string quarterbacks that transferred out because there were so many issues in the team, personnel wise and just player wise. And so a lot of people were really questioning, like, what kind of team are we going to see? Are they going to even have a quarterback, or are they going to just have to convert somebody real quick to a quarterback? People didn't know. And then, they came out and they showed us that, hey, we beat UCLA, who surprisingly some analysts said UCLA would be in the playoffs, which I found hard to believe after the past year before. But A&M really came out and was like, you know what, we're going to be contender to the SEC, and we're going to show people that we're not a pushover. However, as we said, it's tough to go on the road. And, we saw Auburn, whether or not Clemson's as good as they were or as good as people thought, they played tough. And, I think Auburn's a team who is trying to come back to when they had Cam Newton, they won the national title. They're trying to get back to that. And they're having a difficult time doing it. But this would be a game that would help catapult them to getting back to that. And I think they're going to come out and they're going to surprise some people. I think they're going to come out, they're going to play with tough defense. And I think they're just going to hammer away at A&M. And I give this one to Auburn.
All right. Final game now we're going to talk about is number 22 Oregon playing right here in Lincoln against Nebraska. And, we're going to release our final picks, our pregame show on Saturday. It's going to be pretty much right before game time, about an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours before game time. This number right here, you've been seeing it all video. You're probably thinking, what the heck does that mean? That number right there is the number that Nebraska is favored to win by, surprisingly enough, because I have, for days, really weeks since, coming in, I have been agonizing over who is going to win this, and do I pick Nebraska based on, loyalty? Do I pick Nebraska based on merit? Do I pick Oregon objectively? I didn't know. I'm still not 100% sure. But I think this is a game that is going to be a shootout all the way. I think both defenses are not solid. ESPN analysts for some reason are saying that our secondary has really improved. From watching it, I would say they do a better job of swarming to the ball, which is an important thing to improve on. But you have to get your coverage down too. And right now they don't look like they have that down.
Right, and as you all know, if you've watched our pre-games, I am now 0-2 on the season in Nebraska games. And it could be foolish picks, or it could be that I just have, I don't know what to expect from this Nebraska team. This Nebraska team last year, um, I mean, it was questionable if they could beat anybody. I mean, because you didn't know games they should have blew away were either close or they lost, and games that they should have totally got blown away, they came either close or they won. And so it was hard. It's hard to guess what this team under Mike Riley is. And my problem when I look at this game is it's like, how many times can Nebraska have a poor first half and play strong in the third and fourth quarter and win the game? Like, how many times can that happen? Because Wyoming and Fresno are not stellar teams. They're not teams that are gonna most likely come out in the first half and run you up. But Oregon, on the other hand, even though they're not as good as years before, they're still a dynamic offense. And the thing is that's the question. If Nebraska comes out like they did against Fresno or Wyoming in that first half, if they play like they did, Oregon could score 21, 28, 35 in that first half. And that's my problem. And you look at it, Oregon hasn't played the greatest two teams to start out, but playing Virginia last week, Virginia's not a terrible team, and for them to beat them 44-26 is still it's better than beating a Wyoming 52-17 or a Fresno to 43-10. I mean, if you look at it, the two quarterbacks, Oregon's quarterback is 42-61, 602 yards, 6 touchdowns. Tommy Armstrong, first game, didn't have to pass a lot because Nebraska was running the ball, but then Wyoming got that run defense down a little bit for the most part. I mean, they started to break up towards the end, just getting tired, and Tommy had to throw more, and Tommy threw an interception in the red zone. I mean,
it was bad. I mean, there was three. He was triple covered. There was a guy right in front of him, and he just threw it right to that defender. And honestly, I think everybody in the stadium was like, "What are you thinking?" The Nebraska fan base, at least particularly in the student section, is not always the brightest. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
But we heard people behind us like, "Tommy, I hate you," and then later he'd come back and he'd make a throw. He'd throw a ball up, and really wasn't much skill on his part necessarily, but great job by the receivers to make a play, and they'd be, "Tommy, I love you again," and that's kind of a side note. It doesn't really,
right.
But that's kind of like, if you're a coach, it's kind of what you think when you watch Tommy Armstrong, because you go, "Man, this guy's really good," and you see him just do some really stupid things, and you say, "Man, this guy's really dumb."
Mm-hmm.
And he's another player. I think this game depends a lot on Tommy Armstrong and his decision making. If he comes out and he plays, he's going to have to play, I think, a nearly perfect game for Nebraska to win, and he's got to have his mind in the right place. Like we said before, we don't know necessarily if he will or not, and that is really the key, is the unpredictability. But we've seen Nebraska here under Mike Riley. They've been able to, come up with some of these upsets, and I don't know if it's just because teams are underestimating them. I don't know if it's because they say we're playing a tough team now. We really have to buckle down and prepare. I don't know, but they found a way to win. They came back. They beat Michigan State. They beat UCLA in the bowl game, and it's gonna be really good. I think obviously the key here is to start it like Fresno. I think the key is just to run the ball and keep Tommy to 10 passes the first half. That's probably, if you have a solid running game, that's all you're going to need to do. Burn that clock down and just put up points at your pace, make them match you. And I think if they do that, then they have a real good shot at coming away with it.
Same with here. So here's the thing I was getting at. Tommy Armstrong, 25, 44, 485 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. Now, if you look at how Oregon's defense has played the first 2 games, they only allowed 141 rushing yards, 249 passing. So they're allowing 390 yards a game. Now, that doesn't, total yards, it doesn't look really good. But the key is, and Wyoming tapped into this, and they really showed us what can happen. Wyoming, for the most part, shut down Nebraska's run game. For the most part. Yeah, there were a couple here and there, but for a while they
I would-
shut that down.
I would say also though Nebraska wasn't as committed to the run in this game. I think they did like kind of what I talked about earlier, how they wanted to get Tommy throwing a little bit. I think in this game they didn't have the 40, 50 total carries that they had a week before. They had more like 30 total carries, and I think that was a big difference as well. But you are right. Their running game did not look as solid. Their offensive line wasn't getting the same push that it did.
And I, from my perspective, the decreased carries came from the fact of the matter that Nebraska just, for a while, could not get through Wyoming. They just couldn't. And so, the thing is we saw if you force Tommy to throw, even some of the completions he made should have never been thrown. The ball should have never been thrown in that area. It shouldn't have been. But here's the other thing you got to look at. Now, granted, last game was Zigbo couldn't really get the carries for the big yards as he did against Fresno, but 32 carries, 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. But if you look at Freeman on Oregon, 32 carries, 294 yards, 4 touchdowns. So the question's got to be, something's got to give on one side or the other. Either Oregon's going to stop Nebraska's run game and force Tommy to throw, and either he's going to play great or he's going to make a lot of stupid decisions, or Nebraska's going to stop the run for Oregon and force their quarterback to throw. And the question is can he stay on script? I mean, right now he doesn't have any interceptions. He's got 6 touchdowns. He's got over 600 yards. Question is, can he stay on that script? And we don't know. And so really, I think the key to this game is, if Nebraska can stop the run, which they've been pretty good on, but anytime a team gets to the outside, even if it's 5 yards here, 3 yards here, the thing is it starts to open up that pass game for that other team. So if Nebraska can hold their run game, how's their secondary going to come out? And like I said, it's all going to depend. How does Nebraska come out? Do they continue to play okay to subpar first half and come out strong in the third and fourth? Or can they play, a pretty consistent full game? If they can play that consistent full game and Tommy can make smart decisions, I think Nebraska's got this, but I don't know what to expect from this team. It is so hard to guess.
And ultimately, all of these things that we're talking about, what they all boil down to at the heart of it all is the preparation. It's going to depend a lot about the preparation of it. Who is putting in the film hours, who is practicing harder, who's taking extra reps, and as well, something that you don't necessarily think about. Oregon is losing a couple hours of sleep here at the time change. That could potentially be a difference maker as well. And not always, obviously, but it could be, and it's not something that's going to show up on stat sheets. But maybe they look a little slow, maybe they're not. We don't know. They've shown in the past that they can handle kind of the raucous crowds that we're going to see in Lincoln. So I don't expect that to be a huge factor for them. But I think this Husker team gets fired up playing in Memorial Stadium. And when that place gets rocking, it really gets them going. And very close, tough game.
I know this is running a little long. We've been talking about this game for a long time, but there's one more thing that we forgot to mention about this game that's going to be very important. It may all come down to dress. What's Oregon going to come out in? What kind of jersey is Nike just going to throw them? This is the biggest, I think, question that we've neglected to answer.
Obviously, it's going to be something with a shade of red so that Tommy is going to get confused. I mean, he's no Taylor Martinez.
Maybe something reflective to get the fans in there, get the red. But, all these games are going to be really good. From last week, that was, in our opinion, a poor week of college football. This one, is well worth the wait. It's going to be really good this week. As we've been talking about, and as it's continued to grow, and we're very appreciative. Watch our pregame show. I mean, it doubled from the first one. We had almost 700 views on this last one. We're looking to get 1,000 or more on this one. So tune in, share it, like it. And we really cover what's going to happen in that game, in our game, and we're live in front of Memorial Stadium. And we're very appreciative of everybody watching. We continue to encourage you to, like our Facebook page, our Twitter, subscribe, continue to watch our videos, share with your friends. The more views we get, the more subscriptions we get, everything like that, as we always say, it really helps us out.
Yeah, and that is really going to be kind of what drives us forward. It's not going to lie, it can be kind of tough sometimes. You see, oh, we have 20 views on average, and that's a good day. And oh man, we put in, I'd say quite a bit of time into this. I mean, it's especially, I'd say I probably put in probably about 3 to 4 hours, depending on how many games we do, probably extra per week. It's just, adding on top now. We know schedules are getting busier as we go along. It's going to be tougher to keep it up. So, any kind of, comment, things you like, things you don't like, feedback. Let us know we're not talking to a computer monitor in our room, in just this little room the whole time. Let us know that you're out there and you appreciate what we're doing.
When we see all those views on the live feeds, you don't understand how excited we
get. So excited. I mean,
we couldn't believe how our first one turned out over 300, over 300 views, and we doubled. So we're looking to, at least hit 1,000. But hopefully, if we double again, I mean that's 1,200. We just keep going. Check it out. It's really good. We're getting some good reviews on our live shows, and we make them better every week. This game especially, it's going to be really good.
I think it's going to be a little longer this week.
Yes.
Probably not a 4-minute video. It's interesting. We did that 4-minute video. It was shorter than our first week, but it felt longer to us because we covered more. I think we're getting better at doing it. So definitely tune in as we've been ranting for the last 3 minutes about ourselves and selflessly we've been self-promoting unashamedly. That's what I'm saying here.
Well, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate your support, and together we will make sports broadcasting great again.
There he goes. He remembered it.